Hey guys, this is Jay Calder with Jay Unboxing, here giving you a personal prediction for Franchon Crews-Dezurn versus Savannah Marshall. And as always, this is just my take, of course. Your predictions can be left down in the comments section below. Would love to hear them all. Pretty interesting, kind of under the radar fight. Again, the year's been so full of good fights, it's kind of hard to keep track of them all, but this is certainly a pretty good one. Would love to hear all your thoughts and predictions down in the comments section below. And a little bit of fight info here. We have Franchon Crews-Dezurn taking on Savannah Marshall. This would be at the Manchester Arena in Manchester, England. This will be airing live on Sky Sports in the super middleweight division, with Dezurn's Ring Magazine, IBF, WBA, WBC, and WBO super middleweight titles on the line, he said, nearly running out of breath. And this is a good fight in my opinion, at least on paper. You have a reigning undisputed super middleweight champion in Dezurn taking on a former titleist at middleweight in Marshall, and the picks for this one are sort of all over the place, which makes a lot of sense because, again, you have a lot of those sort of variables of the reigning champion against maybe someone who's perceived as the better fighter, but they're moving up. It just kind of makes you wonder how this fight's going to play out. This makes for a very fun time when kind of predicting these sort of fights as well. You have the sometimes wild but very erratic pace of Dezurn that can be very effective for her against the more measured power of Marshall, but someone who could potentially be outworked. So certainly a very interesting dynamic there. Can Dezurn take the power? Can the power carry that Marshall has? Wonder if that's going to go up in weight with her. Let's figure this one out and break it down. Starting with Dezurn here. For Dezurn to win, I think you want to work the double left hook. You have one of those interesting approaches to the left hook where sometimes you'll double it up, and that second one will be you stepping into it a bit more. The first one almost being a decoy or something of a trap that you're setting offensively. I think especially if you can push Marshall back with that first attempt at it, that second left hook can definitely get home and perhaps catch her off guard. Naturally, you're going to have to do this a little bit tighter, a little bit neater than sometimes you do it, and you're going to have to try and catch her off guard with it as mentioned, but if you can get it going at the right distance and time it perfectly, I think it's a shot that can work well for you in this fight. What's more, Marshall has pretty good head movement and upper body movement. When that first punch comes, she's usually able to move out of the way of it. If you can get that second shot in when she's maybe not expecting it, it's a shot I think she might not see coming and one that you can score with consistently. You just want to make sure that you're doing it from a position that makes sense for you in terms of space and then just in terms of your own defensive responsibilities, but also from a spot where you're going to be able to throw it that second time and not get caught with a counter shot that potentially has more steam on it. I would also say keep up the guard. In general, you actually can box pretty well and move pretty well overall. You've certainly gotten better as your career has progressed. One area, however, where you do tend to have those kind of lapses back to a style that can sometimes not suit you is with that defense. Specifically when you're throwing punches or when you feel like you're in a more relaxed position based on where you're at in the ring. Your defense, and meaning your guard, will drop a bit, and at times you'll get hit with those shots you don't need to, simply because either you're cocking back with the shot too much, telegraphing it, and it's just a point where I think Marshall will be good enough to take advantage of it if you let it happen too consistently. I'm not asking, of course, for you to reinvent the wheel here. You're not going to become a defensive wizard overnight, or certainly in one camp for this fight, but certainly against someone who may have exceptional power for a women's fighter especially, you want to make sure that your guard's up enough so that you can at least ensure you're able to take the punches when you do need to, and at the very least you're taking as little punches as possible to begin with. And finally, I would say don't lunge inside. This is one of those other areas where, again, at times you can be a bit more crude. Now, does this mean you don't want to press the action? No. I think ultimately you're a fighter that wants to come forward and get some of your work done. That's where you're going to get your best work done. You're going to try to throw those hard bombs over the top, you're going to wing them around the guard, and you're going to try to push the fighter back that's in front of you. That being said, you don't want to do it in this reckless way where you're making that double impact for the person trying to hit you that might, again, have some pretty exceptional power. Depends on how it carries, but you just don't want to have to test that theory if you don't have to. So make sure that that guard is up, that you're not lunging inside, and that when you're getting that left hook going, you're doubling it up at times to throw her off, which can set up a lot of the other more aggressive work you're looking to set up. Switching over to Marshall. For Marshall to win, I think you want to go with the right hand, left hook. And in general, that's, I think, what you're looking for as a power puncher. Those are two solid shots, but I think you have, as your Marshall, really good right hands and left hooks to begin with, so it's certainly something I would be looking for. What's more, that's kind of is a double meaning in the sense that, yes, you want to find that right hand, left hook as a combination, but just as single shots, they work for you as well. You have a decent amount of power, and again, I presume that at least enough of it will carry that you can probably keep Dezurn honest if you're landing clean. Quickest, easiest ways to do that are with that right hand right down the middle, especially because your punches seem to have a better straight trajectory than a lot of Dezurn's have, and that left hook can kind of line her up for that as well. Again, in combination form, or if you're just getting those punches going individually, I think they'll be good for you in this particular contest. I would also argue time her defensive lapses. As I mentioned in Dezurn's keys there, she can be defensively lackluster at times. And again, she does that to some degree because it fits her offense, so she's willing to make those kind of engagements. That being said, you're going to want to try and time that. Your goal is not to necessarily get into a firefight, it's to put out her fire. And a way you're going to be able to do that is by timing a lot of her tells. If you see that she's lunging in and that defensive hand cocks back and isn't covering her face, hit her with that left. If you see that she's coming in trying to be a little more wild with the opposite hand, again, that right hand is going to be there for you. You're going to want to use that right hand and left hook we talked about to time these defensive lapses and begin to tame Dezurn as the fight progresses. And finally, I would say push Dezurn backwards. Now, this doesn't have to happen all the time. You, of course, can do some boxing yourself, and if you want to stick and move at moments to kind of, build yourself into the fight or take a round off or just get a bit of a breather, whatever it is, that makes sense. But in general, Dezurn is not going to fight nearly as well or effectively going backwards, and that's what you're going to look to exploit. When you can push her back and land those punches that are, again, possibly harder shots that you're going to be able to step into now, they're going to be all the more effective. I think ultimately if Dezurn's then trying to counter that by pushing back, she'll be walking into that power, and now you're really in a spot where a lot of the work you're getting done is going to be beneficial. So push her back, of course. Make sure you're trying to take advantage of those defensive lapses. You can definitely do that with the right hand left hook combination I mentioned. Tying all this together, I think you'll have some decent success. Now, in terms of my pick here, I think this is a tricky fight, but my instinct is telling me Marshall takes this one. Overall, I think the somewhat tidier work of Marshall is what will help her through this contest, mixed with that power edge that I think she will have on the night. If she lets Dezurn dictate tempo and push her and get aggressive with her too much, she's in trouble, but I see Marshall avoiding that overall. I think Marshall uses her solid reach to get her straighter shots home and faster. The power will carry enough to keep Dezurn honest and ultimately allow for her to dictate terms. The right hands and left hooks during those exchanges where Dezurn is trying to press may even trouble Franchon enough from time to time to stun her, or don't think she necessarily drops, but it wouldn't be out of the question either. I think Dezurn will have her moments, perhaps even late, as she might be used to the weight and maybe will finish a bit stronger, but ultimately in the end, I think it reaches the cards, but it's a solid win for Marshall. And considering location, considering she's going to be the home fighter, she's likely to receive the benefit of the doubt in a close one anyway, giving me a little more reason to make this pick on top of everything else. Winner, Savannah Marshall via solid unanimous decision. Now, the betting odds here for this one have Dezurn coming in as an underdog at a plus 280, with Marshall coming in at a minus 400. I think the odds are set well enough in that I think Marshall has performed a little bit better in most of her fights, and again, as a more technical fighter, that has probably fought at a higher level well compared to Dezurn. That being said, I think they are a little bit wide. Dezurn deserves her credit, and again, she's an undisputed champion at her home weight. These are surprisingly wide for me in that respect. If you're going to lay a bet here, my bet would be on Dezurn. Again, not picking her, but just based upon the value you're getting, almost 3-to-1 odds for an underdog when she's the home fighter in terms of weight and the undisputed champion. Again, wouldn't bet the house on it, but certainly a small bet there, at least to try to take advantage of some of that value, would make some sense to me. In terms of the over-under, it's set at 8.5, with the over coming in at a minus 650 and the under coming in at a plus 400. Kind of an interesting line there again. It's difficult and tricky with the amount of rounds and the time in rounds in female fighting to kind of dictate these over-unders or determine what's the best bet for you, but really you could make an argument, to be honest, for the under in this case. It's not that, again, that I'm predicting that. I'm not, as you hopefully just heard in this prediction here, but at the very least, it's something that I could see happening when you have, again, a naturally bigger fighter, perhaps, in terms of just overall, size and being used to the size in Franchon Crews-Dezurn versus that puncher in Savannah Marshall. Again, it's hard to say in this particular case, but there might be some value in that if you're looking for that over-under bet. But in any event, those are your odds. And my prediction record as of this recording is 18-10 with 11 exact, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, your predictions, bets, so on and so forth. What do you think of this fight in general? Again, I think it's a pretty decent one, so I'd love to hear your predictions and your thoughts on that as well. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB. And you can email me at jagonboxing@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you there. Also, be sure to check out jagonboxing.com for schedule, results, betting odds, rankings, and more. And as always, until next time.